The room was too bright for betrayal. White walls. Glass table. Coffee that smelled richer than the truth about to drop. Across from me sat Alex, my boss, my mentor, the man who once called me his secret weapon. He wasn't smiling now. "Rachel," he said, adjusting his cufflinks like he was rehearsing a speech, "we've decided to go in a different direction." The words hit before they made sense. Different direction? He nodded, smooth and practiced. "You've done great work, but we need new energy. Someone who fits our brand." Brand. The word burned. I wasn't a brand. I was the backbone, the one who'd kept the lights on while he played visionary. Then, with that calm, managerial cruelty only certain men can pull off, he added, "We'll make the announcement at today's all-hands. I want to be transparent with the team." My stomach dropped. "You're firing me, publicly?" He smiled, small and sharp. "It's better this way. Clean. Professional." Professional, right. By the time the meeting started, I already knew what he was doing. There were too many smiles, too many whispers. He wanted a show. When he stood up in front of the whole company, his voice filled the room. "I want to thank Rachel for her years of service," he said, hand resting on my shoulder like he owned me. "But as of today, we're making some structural changes." Every eye turned to me. I felt heat crawl up my neck, but I stayed still. He went on, talking about growth, new leadership, synergy, all the words that mean nothing when they're aimed at one person. When he finished, people clapped awkwardly. Alex started it himself, grinning like he'd just delivered good news. I gathered my things. My hand shook only once, when I unplugged my laptop. Then I looked him straight in the eye and said, "Good luck running the system without me." He blinked, confused, but I didn't give him the satisfaction of explaining. Outside, the cold hit me like a slap. I walked for blocks, no direction, just anger keeping me warm. That night I couldn't sleep. My apartment felt smaller than usual, like the walls were closing in. I kept replaying that meeting, the smug look, the fake applause, the sound of my own heartbeat in my ears. I'd given 6 years to that company. Built their project management system from scratch. Designed every workflow. Every password, every failsafe, every shortcut, they all started with me. And he knew that. At midnight, I opened my personal laptop. Not the company one, he'd probably already locked me out, but my own. I'd kept copies of my work. Nothing illegal, just my own code, my own designs. Proof that I'd built what I said I built. When I tried logging into the company system out of habit, I got the message I expected: access denied. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then, slowly, a small smile formed. He thought he'd locked me out, but Alex never really understood how the system worked. He didn't know that the master access key wasn't stored on their servers. It was local. Offline. On a flash drive that had my initials scratched into the metal. He thought he had all the keys. He didn't. The next morning, my phone buzzed. A text from Jenna, one of my old teammates. "You okay? That was brutal yesterday." I typed back. "I'm fine. Just need a few days." She replied instantly. "Everyone's furious. He shouldn't have done that. Half the dev team's threatening to quit." That made me pause. Maybe I wasn't as alone as I thought. I opened my email, personal inbox this time, and saw something strange. A message from Daniel Lee, one of our investors. Subject line: "Call me." Daniel had always been polite but distant, the kind of man who only talked numbers. If he was reaching out, something was happening. I hesitated for a second, then hit dial. "Rachel," he said immediately. "I just heard what Alex did. Are you available to meet?" "Sure," I said carefully. "What's this about?" "Let's just say," he replied, "I'm not thrilled about how he's running things. I think we can help each other." He hung up before I could ask more. I stared at the phone, heart racing. Help each other? What did that mean? By noon, I was sitting across from Daniel in a quiet cafe. He didn't waste time. I know you built the system, he said. Alex's version of the story doesn't add up. The board wants clarity before the next funding round. You have documentation? Yes, I said slowly. Everything. Good, he said, leaning back. Then maybe it's time we start asking the right questions. Something in his tone told me he wasn't just talking about questions. He was talking about consequences. And as I looked out the window at the office tower across the street, the one I'd spent half a decade building from the inside, I realized I wasn't done with Alex. Not yet. I wasn't planning revenge. I was planning balance. And balance always starts with a key. Daniel didn't waste time. He slid a small notebook across the cafe table and said, "Write down what only you know. Not opinions. Levers. Levers." I understood. I wrote fast. Which vendors touched our billing pipeline? Where the audit logs lived? Which approvals Alex bypassed when he was moving fast? Which features would stall if someone flipped a single toggle? Daniel read, then nodded once. This is enough to start an internal review. He looked up. You won't speak to press. You won't post online. You'll give me clean copies and let the process work. I agreed. I wasn't here for noise. I was here for gravity. We met again that evening, this time in a glass conference room at his firm. 2 of his partners joined. They asked clear questions, the kind that cut straight through ego. I walked them through my diagrams in plain English. What the system did. Where it was strong. Where it could be abused. I did not accuse anyone. I just showed the map. By morning, an email went to the board, formal request for a third-party audit of financial operations and system controls. Alex was copied. I pictured his jaw clenching as he read words he couldn't spin. Before lunch, he went on LinkedIn and posted about transparency during growth. I almost laughed. He always reached for a spotlight when the room got dark. The auditors arrived fast. Suits. Calm faces. The kind of people who survive storms because they walk into them with clipboards. They asked for contracts, vendor lists, access logs. They asked to speak with me. I showed them everything I had saved for my portfolio, diagrams, notes, version histories that had my name all over them. I also gave them a list of people inside who would tell the truth if asked. Not gossips. Witnesses. Jenna texted me at dusk. He's pacing the floor. Won't look anyone in the eye. Then another. Priya says client invoices were rerouted last quarter. Tiny amounts. Adds up. I forwarded both messages to counsel with no comment. I was not going to be the story. The numbers would be. The next day, I went back to my apartment, made coffee, and opened the flash drive with my initials scratched into it. On it lived the original configuration files I had written in year 1. Standard stuff for my portfolio, scrubbed of client data, but enough to prove authorship. The master integration key wasn't text. It was a math challenge only the original config could answer. I had invented it to protect us from sloppy changes. Alex never learned how it worked. He only learned how to brag about it. My phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A few seconds later, a text from the same number. You made a mistake, Rachel. I saved it and said nothing. By afternoon, Daniel called. His voice sounded lighter. Early findings show off book spend and a shell vendor. He paused. It's not definitive yet, but the pattern is bad. I felt the tiniest rush of air in my lungs. Not joy. Relief that reality had a pulse. That said, he continued, expect noise. Alex hired a crisis firm. They'll aim at you. Right on cue, a blog popped up calling me bitter and unstable. Anonymous quotes. Lazy smears. I closed the tab, took a breath, and kept working. I made a clean timeline for the auditors with dates, emails, approvals, and who said yes when they should have said no. I wrote like a witness. Simple, short lines. No adjectives. The board scheduled a closed session for Friday. Alex tried to cancel it. They refused. He replied with a long email about vision and loyalty. The chair replied with one sentence, attend and bring documentation. Thursday night, Sasha pinged me. We found something in the repo history. A backdoor written under a generic admin account. Timestamp matches Alex's late-night fixes. I told him to export and preserve, then send to counsel, not me. I was not touching live systems. My hands stayed clean. Friday came. I waited in a side room while the board met with the auditors. Through the glass, I saw Alex arrive in a navy suit and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He shook hands like a man running for office. Then he saw me. His face tightened for half a second. He looked away. An hour later, they called me in. I sat, palms flat on the table, and answered what they asked. I did not look at Alex. The chair asked me to explain, in simple terms, the risk of a single person approving vendors and pushing code without peer review. I did. The auditors backed it with numbers. Daniel leaned back, hands folded, and watched the room absorb the truth. When I finished, the chair thanked me and asked me to wait outside. I stepped into the hall, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my wrists. A few minutes later, I heard loud voices. Not a fight. A fracture. The door opened. Alex came out first, jaw tight, sunglasses already in his hand like a shield. He stared at me as he passed. No words. Just a look that said he had one move left and planned to use it. Daniel stepped out next. Administrative leave, he said softly. Pending completion of the audit. I nodded. It wasn't victory. It was a pause button. The kind that keeps buildings from collapsing while you check the foundation. That night, an email went to the whole company. It said almost nothing and everything at once. Temporary leadership change. Audit continuing. Business as usual. People texted me fireworks and heart emojis. I sent back thumbs up and went to wash dishes with shaking hands. Near midnight, my phone buzzed again. A video link from an anonymous account. I pressed play. Alex, in a dim room, speaking straight into his camera. He looked angry and tired. If you think I'm done, you don't know me. They can take the title. They can't take what I built. I still have keys. He said keys like they were weapons. I paused the video and stared at my flash drive. The thing about keys is simple. In the right hands, they open doors. In the wrong hands, they show everyone which doors you should have never had access to in the first place. I sent the video to counsel and to Daniel with one line, logging off. Call me at first light. Then I put the flash drive in a small metal tin, slid it under the top drawer of my desk, and sat on the floor until my pulse slowed. Tomorrow would be loud. I needed quiet now. Before I slept, I wrote 3 sentences on a sticky note and stuck it to my monitor. Document. Preserve. Do not flinch. I turned off the light and let the room go dark, knowing morning would bring the next move, and this time it would be mine. When I woke up the next morning, the first thing I saw was the yellow sticky note on my monitor, document. Preserve. Do not flinch. Good. Because that day would test every word. My phone buzzed before I'd even made coffee. Daniel. Rachel, don't panic, but something's happened. Those 4 words always mean panic carefully. He explained that sometime during the night, Alex had logged into a restricted account and exported several project files that belonged to active clients under non-disclosure. The audit team caught the activity at 3:14 a.m. Their report was already on the board's desk. He's claiming he just needed backups, Daniel said, voice tight. But the metadata shows he transferred them to a personal drive. I rubbed my forehead. He's trying to prove he still has control. Exactly, Daniel said. And he's about to learn he doesn't. At noon the board froze Alex's credentials completely. He must have realized it instantly, because 10 minutes later my phone lit up with a blocked number. Rachel, his voice hissed, you think this ends with your little audit? You have no idea who you're dealing with. I let the silence stretch. Actually, Alex, I do. I worked for him for 6 years. Then I hung up. By afternoon, the auditors confirmed what we suspected. The vendor payments went straight to a shell company registered under Alex's cousin's name. Small sums, 5,000 here, 10 there, but together they painted a clear picture. He'd been siphoning money for months, just slow enough that no one noticed. Daniel called again. The board wants to refer it to council. You'll probably be contacted to sign an affidavit. I'll sign whatever's true, I said. I spent the next hours building a clean folder for legal, every file with dates, screenshots, and the chain of command. It felt less like revenge and more like repair work, like rewiring a machine that someone had tried to overload. Around sunset, I met Jenna and Sasha at a small diner near the office. They both looked drained but hopeful. He's losing it, Jenna said. He came in this morning demanding his old keycard work. Security had to escort him out. Sasha slid a USB stick across the table. Backup of everything we found in the repository. You should keep a copy offsite. I pushed it back. Give it to legal. Not me. He nodded, understanding. We were all done with secrets. That night, my inbox exploded again, emails from clients, reporters, even a tech journalist asking for a comment on the unfolding leadership drama. I ignored them. The story would tell itself soon enough. At 9 p.m. Daniel texted a single line. Emergency board session tomorrow. Be ready. Sleep didn't come easy. I sat at my desk, the city's neon reflecting off the window, and opened my old flash drive one more time. The files blinked on screen like tiny memories. Code I'd written at 2 in the morning, systems that had once made me proud. I wasn't angry anymore. I just wanted my work clean again. At dawn, I dressed like I was going to war, neutral colors, hair tied back, calm face. When I reached the building, security met me at the door and escorted me upstairs. Alex was already there, pacing, eyes bloodshot. You happy? He snapped as I entered. You and your investor boyfriend destroyed everything. I documented everything, I corrected. He laughed, a hard, sharp sound. You think they'll choose you over me? I am the company. I looked him straight in the eye. Not anymore. The board filed in, grim and silent. Daniel gave me a slight nod to sit. The chair began. Mr. Heller, the audit found evidence of unauthorized payments and data transfers. Do you wish to respond? Alex launched into a speech about loyalty, innovation, betrayal, his voice rising, hands slicing the air. He talked for 10 minutes before the chair cut him off. Thank you. The documentation we have speaks for itself. Then Daniel slid a printed page across the table, an image of the file transfer log from 3:14 a.m. Alex stared at it. His face drained of color. This proves nothing, he muttered. It proves intent, Daniel said quietly. Silence filled the room. The chair looked around and finally said, effective immediately, Mr. Heller is terminated as CEO pending legal review. No applause this time. Just the sound of a man realizing his voice no longer mattered. He turned toward me as they escorted him out. You did this, he whispered. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. After the meeting, Daniel and I walked to the parking lot in the warm afternoon air. For the first time in weeks, the tension in my chest eased. Congratulations, he said. You handled this better than most professionals I know. I smiled faintly. It wasn't about winning. I just wanted the truth to stand. He nodded. Still, you took down a storm with facts. That's rare. We stood there a moment, watching the skyline. I thought it was over. Then my phone buzzed with a new message, from a number labeled private. You think you're safe now? Check your servers. I showed Daniel. His face hardened. Let's get inside. Within minutes, the IT team confirmed that someone had attempted to run an unauthorized update request using Alex's old credentials that should have been dead. The command failed, but the intent was clear. He'd tried to damage the system on his way out. The board acted fast, locking down every endpoint. The digital traces pointed back to the same personal laptop Alex had used for those late-night exports. He'd been careless, arrogant to the end. When the chaos finally subsided, Daniel looked at me and said, "You realize what saved us, right? That local safeguard you built years ago, the one with the math key." I smiled, a tired kind of smile. Yeah. The one he never understood. That safeguard, the invisible lock I'd written in the early days, had stopped his final act of sabotage cold. The key he thought gave him power had done the opposite, it exposed him. That night, alone in my apartment, I finally allowed myself to feel it. Not gloating, not rage, just a deep, steady satisfaction. Justice doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just exhales. I closed my laptop, poured a glass of wine, and stood by the window watching the city lights flicker like code on a screen. Tomorrow, there would be statements, lawyers, cleanup. But tonight, for the first time in months, the silence felt like peace. And somewhere across the city, Alex would be staring at his own locked screen, realizing that the keys I'd given him had never been his to use, they'd been the trapdoor beneath his own feet. The day after Alex's removal felt like waking up after a storm. The air was too still, the office too quiet. News spread fast, some employees relieved, others confused, everyone pretending to focus on their screens while the company's name trended online. I came in through the side entrance. A few people looked up as I passed. Jenna whispered, "You really did it." "No," I said. "The truth did." Daniel had asked me to stay temporarily as consultant for continuity. It sounded clinical, but I knew what it meant: fix what Alex had broken, stabilize what mattered, and keep investors calm. The boardroom looked different without him. No posturing, no fake enthusiasm, just weary professionals trying to rebuild. The acting CEO, a quiet finance director named Howard, turned to me. "Rachel, we'll need a full rundown on system dependencies and vendor replacements. Can you lead that?" "I can," I said. "But we start with people. They're scared." He nodded slowly. "Then start there." I gathered the core team: Sasha from Dev, Priya from Client Success, and Jenna from Ops. We met in the same glass room where Alex had once humiliated me. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. I told them everything that could be told without breaking confidentiality. The audit confirmed misuse of funds, Alex was under investigation, and the company would survive if we worked together. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Sasha said, "So what now? Pretend it never happened?" "No," I said. "We remember why we started. We build something honest this time." They nodded, and in that quiet agreement, I felt something loosen inside me. The place that had once been a source of humiliation was slowly turning into a workshop again. We worked late into the night. Cleaning databases. Reassigning permissions. Rebuilding client trust one email at a time. For the first time in years, the code felt alive again. No grand speeches, no shiny PR, just people doing real work. By Friday, lawyers sent updates. Alex was facing a formal investigation for financial misconduct. The shell company transfers, the attempted data breach, it all painted a clear picture. There'd be hearings, maybe charges. I felt no joy reading it, just a steady calm. Accountability wasn't revenge. It was maintenance. Still, the noise outside grew louder. Reporters camped near the lobby. Blogs speculated. One headline read, CEO ousted after ex-employee blows whistle. My name stayed out of it, but I could feel it hovering in every line. That weekend, Daniel called. The board's impressed, he said. They're considering offering you a permanent leadership role. Would you take it? The question caught me off guard. For years, I'd worked behind the scenes, the invisible engine. The idea of running the show felt heavy. I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe it's time I build something new. For myself this time. He chuckled softly. Whatever you build next, make sure you own the keys. Sunday morning, I drove by the office out of habit. The windows reflected the pale spring light. I remembered my first day there, full of hope, believing we were building something good. Maybe we still could, without him. As I turned the corner, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. A short text. You think you won. Check the news tomorrow. I froze. The old chill returned. I opened my laptop that night and refreshed the headlines every hour. At dawn, there it was, an anonymous leak claiming the company had suppressed evidence and retaliated against leadership. A smear, clearly fed by Alex. The timing was meant to wound morale, just as we were finding footing. Daniel called before I could even curse. We'll handle it, he said, voice clipped. Legal's already drafting a response. You stay quiet. I stayed quiet, but I didn't stay still. I pulled every log from the night Alex had been locked out, the one where he'd tried to access the servers. Each line of code was timestamped and tied to his personal credentials. Proof. I saved it in 3 places, encrypted, and sent 1 copy to the legal team. Let him shout. Facts have longer legs. By midweek, the smear backfired. The auditors released their final report publicly, clear, detailed, damning. Every transaction traceable. Every lie dismantled by data. The story flipped. Whistleblower safeguards saved firm from collapse. Messages poured in. Strangers on LinkedIn calling me brave. Old classmates saying they always knew I'd go far. It was strange, the same people who'd ignored me now reaching for a piece of the story. But the one message that mattered came from Jenna. He underestimated you, Ratch. Thanks for proving what real leadership looks like. I stared at it for a long time. Then I finally let myself laugh, quiet, tired, real. That night, I returned to the glass conference room alone. The city glowed outside, distant and forgiving. I plugged in my old flash drive one last time and looked at the code that had started it all. The master key string blinked on my screen like a heartbeat. I deleted it. Not out of anger, but closure. The company no longer needed it. Neither did I. I shut the laptop, picked up my bag, and turned off the lights. The building was silent except for the hum of the servers, machines still running on systems I had built, now finally safe from the man who had once claimed them as his own. As I stepped into the cool night, my phone buzzed again. Daniel. They want to name the internal project after you, he said. Something symbolic. Any suggestions? I smiled at the sidewalk ahead. Call it reboot. Because that's what it was, not revenge, not victory. Just a restart. And as the doors closed behind me, I realized that sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying someone's empire. It's walking away from the ruins with your integrity intact and a brand new set of keys. The week after the audit went public felt like stepping into sunlight after months underground. Clients stopped asking if we were stable and started asking about roadmaps again. The team moved with a quiet confidence I hadn't seen in years. People smiled in hallways without checking over their shoulders first. I thought the worst was behind us. Then the summons arrived. A process server met me outside the lobby and handed me a thick envelope with my name typed in heavy font. Heller vs. Morgan et al. Alex was suing me for tortious interference and defamation, claiming I'd conspired with investors to steal his company. It read like a script for a movie where the villain demands a rewrite. I took the elevator to the empty fourth-floor lounge and read every page. My hands didn't shake. Not this time. It was loud, yes. But loud isn't the same as strong. Daniel called before I could bring the envelope upstairs. You got it? I did. Good. Our counsel has a response ready. We'll counter with the audit findings, the vendor records, the 3:14 a.m. transfers, everything. He wants a stage. We'll give him a courtroom. The word courtroom lodged under my ribs in a way nothing else had. I didn't want a spectacle. I wanted a clean exit. But sometimes the only way out is through a door with cameras on both sides. The first hearing drew more press than I expected. I wore a plain suit and kept my hair back. No statement. No smirk. Just the facts lined up in a binder. Alex came in 5 minutes late in a dark suit 2 shades too bold, jaw flexed, eyes scanning for a lens to catch his best angle. He glared at me like I'd robbed him of air. His attorney stood and floated words like innovation and founder vision and jealous subordinates. Our counsel stood and said forensic accounting, then passed the judge a binder of exhibits. It was almost boring the way truth looks next to theater. When the judge asked why funds were routed through a shell owned by Alex's cousin, his lawyer blustered about temporary vehicles. The judge lifted one eyebrow. Temporary vehicles don't typically end at personal accounts, he said. He set a hearing for evidence and reminded both parties about decorum. Alex smirked on the walk out like he'd won a round that didn't exist. Outside, microphones sprouted like weeds. Ms. Morgan, any comment? I gave them the same sentence every time. We're cooperating fully. It wasn't satisfying. It was correct. Back upstairs, the team was waiting with awkward smiles and paper cups of coffee like a tiny victory parade. Priya hugged me without warning. You're doing great, she said into my shoulder. We're with you. I believed her. That belief felt like armor. We kept building. We replaced the last vendor Alex had slipped in. We restored peer review on all changes. We documented everything as if a future version of us would need to understand why we chose each line. No heroes, no secrets. Just shared keys. A week later, a package arrived at my apartment. No note, no return address. Inside was my old company badge, the one Alex had deactivated the day he fired me, snapped clean in half. I stared at it for a while, then dropped it in a drawer and texted Daniel, he's escalating. He replied, let him. We'll keep our lane. I tried to sleep that night, but my body hummed like a machine left on. At 2 a.m., I got up, made tea, and opened the folder named Reboot. Our new roadmap filled the screen, features we'd promised clients before the chaos, fixes we'd delayed too long, a discovery column we'd finally resurrected. I added one line at the top, no single point of failure. Ever again. The preliminary trial date landed a month out. In between motions, life tried to be normal. I went to stand-ups, made lists, brought donuts on a Thursday because morale needed sugar and warmth. Little things that say we're human, not just headlines and logs. Then came the unexpected offer. A woman named Elise Weaver asked to meet. She ran a mid-sized platform in our space, one that had always punched above its weight with actual product instead of pyrotechnics. We met in a sunlit corner of a quiet hotel lobby. She spoke like a person who had run out of time for nonsense years ago. I read the audit, she said. And the filings. You kept a company standing when its leader tried to knock it over. I kept systems standing, I said. A lot of other people kept the company. She smiled. Semantics. Here's what I want, come run product for us. Clean slate. No theatrics. A team that cares about work and sleeps at night. She slid a simple packet across the table. Terms. Equity. Autonomy. A fair number that felt like respect and not a bribe. I didn't touch the packet. You know there's a trial coming. I do. The best time to hire a leader is when she's already telling the truth under oath. It was the closest thing to flattery that didn't feel like a trap. I told her I'd think. She nodded once, stood, and left me with sun and a choice. Back at the office, Howard, the acting CEO, stopped by my desk. If you're thinking about leaving, he said gently, I'll respect it. If you're thinking about staying, I'll back it. Either way, make the decision for the right reason, not because you feel responsible for a man's mess. I watched him walk away and wondered when exactly this building had started sounding sane again. The next hearing was sharper. Alex's side tried to exclude the midnight transfer logs. Our counsel explained the chain of custody like a calm teacher. The judge allowed everything. While opposing counsel complained, Alex leaned forward, eyes on me, and mouthed, "Traitor." For a second, the old heat climbed my neck. Then I remembered the sticky note from months back. Document. Preserve. Do not flinch. I looked at him like a closed door and turned back to the bench. After court, I found a voicemail from my mother, who rarely left messages longer than a sentence. I saw the article about your case, she said. I'm proud of you for not shouting. I stood in the corridor and held that line like a stone in my palm. 2 days later, we got the email. The judge denied Alex's motion and scheduled a full evidentiary hearing. A reporter called the decision a strong wind at the defendant's back. I called it a calendar invite we won't miss. That evening, I met Elise again. I asked hard questions this time about governance, documentation, failure planning. She answered with specifics, not adjectives. When she finished, she asked, "Why are you hesitating?" "Because I don't build to run from something," I said. "I build to run to something." "Good," she said simply. "Then come build this." I told her I'd give her an answer after the hearing. Her handshake was steady, like someone accustomed to living with consequences. On the night before court, I sat in my apartment with the blinds open and the city humming beneath me. I took the snapped badge from the drawer and set it beside the flash drive in its tin. Relics of a place that had tried to shrink me and accidentally taught me the size of my own spine. My phone buzzed one last time, a blocked number, a single sentence. "If I go down tomorrow, I'm taking your reputation with me." I stared at the screen until my reflection blurred. Then I placed the phone face down, slid the flash drive back into the tin, and packed my bag. Morning would bring a witness stand, exhibits, questions, and cameras. Morning would settle what noise never could. I turned off the light, heart steady, and let the quiet wrap around me like armor. Because tomorrow wasn't about Alex, or the board, or the blogs. Tomorrow was about telling the truth, out loud, under oath, and deciding which door I'd walk through when the gavel finally fell. Morning came gray and cold, the kind of light that makes the world look colorless until you decide what color you're going to bring to it. I dressed without music, hair tied back, neutral suit, a notebook in my bag that said simply truth. When I reached the courthouse, the air buzzed with static. Cameras, murmurs, coffee cups. Alex stood on the steps, speaking to a reporter, smiling that too perfect smile of his. For a second, I saw the man I used to work beside, the one who could charm a room and sell any vision. Then I remembered the night he'd clapped at my firing, and the image hardened again. Inside, the courtroom was cooler. The judge entered. The bailiff's voice echoed, "All rise." I rose. The proceedings began with evidence. Our counsel laid out the digital trail, the vendor invoices, the transfers, the shell company, the midnight logins. They projected my original diagrams on a screen, and for the first time, the room saw what I had built, the clean architecture, the signatures, the checkpoints Alex had ignored. My turn came mid-morning. The clerk swore me in, and I sat in the witness chair with the weight of months pressing behind my ribs. "Ms. Morgan," our counsel began gently, "please describe your role in the company." I told them about the early years, 5 people in a shared workspace, late nights fueled by takeout and belief. I described how systems evolve, how you add guardrails when growth outpaces discipline. I spoke slowly, simply, like explaining to new hires again. I didn't look at Alex, but I could feel his stare. They asked about the safeguards, the master key, the failed sabotage attempt. I explained how the key worked, how it prevented any one person, even me, from making unilateral changes without a verification handshake. And who designed that verification? The lawyer asked. I did, I said. Because power without friction breaks things. The judge nodded slightly. Then Alex's attorney stood. Ms. Morgan, isn't it true that you retained proprietary information on a personal device? Yes, I said. A portfolio copy of my own work, scrubbed of client data. It's standard practice in our industry. He smirked. Convenient. I kept my voice steady. Transparent. He tried to paint me as vindictive. I let him finish each sentence, then answered with dates, emails, facts. Not heat, facts. By the end, he sounded exhausted by his own performance. When he sat, the judge asked if I had anything to add. I did. People think revenge is fire, I said quietly. But it's actually light. It shows what's been hiding in the dark. That's all I wanted, to see clearly again. The courtroom stayed silent long enough for the clock's second hand to tick twice. After lunch, they played a recording of Alex's late-night rant, the one where he'd said, "I still have keys." The room shifted. You could feel it, the pivot from denial to inevitability. His attorney tried to object, but the judge waved him down. Mr. Heller, this is your voice? Alex hesitated. It was taken out of context. Context won't change the metadata, the judge said. That was the moment it ended. You could see it in his shoulders, the way pride deflates when truth finally lands. 2 hours later, the judge read the decision. The evidence of misconduct was overwhelming. The company retained ownership of all intellectual property. Alex's claims were dismissed with prejudice. Restitution proceedings would follow for misused funds. I didn't cheer. No one did. Justice doesn't need applause. It just needs completion. Alex stood, eyes empty, then turned toward me. For a second, I thought he might speak. But he didn't. He just left. The doors closed behind him with a dull thud that sounded a lot like closure. Outside, cameras flashed. Daniel shielded me with his arm. No comments, he told the reporters. Then he leaned closer and said quietly, "It's over." I nodded. My throat was tight, but not from tears. From relief. That night, the office buzzed like a hive. People hugged, laughed softly, ordered pizza. Not celebration, more like exhale. Howard gave a short speech about integrity. He ended it by saying, "To the people who fixed what was broken." Everyone clapped, and someone raised a slice of pepperoni like a toast. I slipped away early, out the back door. The city air smelled of rain. 2 weeks later, Elise called again. "The verdict's public now," she said. "So I'll ask again, will you come build with us?" I hesitated only a second this time. Yes. Her laugh was quick and warm. "Welcome aboard. You start when you're ready." I gave notice to the board, helped document everything one last time, and handed over my remaining access keys. Howard shook my hand. "You saved us," he said. "No," I told him. "I just made sure we learned." Before leaving, I walked one last loop through the office. The glass conference room stood empty, chairs neatly arranged. For a moment, I saw the ghost of that day, Alex's smirk, my quiet exit, and then it vanished, replaced by sunlight on clean glass. On my final morning, I packed 2 things, my notebook labeled Truth and the small tin with the flash drive inside. I took them to the river walk and sat on a bench as the city woke around me. I opened the tin, pulled out the drive, and held it in my palm. It had once been my protection, my leverage, my revenge. Now it was just metal and memory. I stood, walked to the edge of the water, and let it fall. A small splash, swallowed by ripples. That was it, the end of Alex's shadow, the end of this chapter. Months later, I stood in a new office, Elisa's company, walls covered with white bards, laughter echoing from real collaboration. The first project I led was simple: build a system that outlasts any one ego. When we finished, the team insisted on naming it. Priya, now consulting for us, grinned and said, "Call it Reboot." I laughed. Perfect. We launched quietly. No grand speeches. Just a note in the changelog that read, "Built by people who believe in shared keys." Sometimes, late at night, when the office lights dim and screens fade to sleep, I think back to that moment in the restaurant, the clapping, the humiliation, the sharp ache of disbelief. I remember walking out, head high, heart pounding. That was the day Alex thought he ended me. But really, it was the day I began. Because the keys he took from me never belonged to him. They were lessons, written in code and consequence. And the best thing I ever did was hand him the illusion of power, then watch him trip over his own access. When I leave the new office each evening, I check the locks myself. Old habit. Then I slip the real key, a small silver one, to the night guard, smile, and say, "All yours." Because I've learned something simple: the best revenge isn't fire or fame. It's freedom. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more thrilling stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.